Welcome. Thank you all so much for joining this faculty office hours session for psychology. We're really glad that you're here spending some time with us to learn more about the psychology program, academics, and community at Reed. My name is Grant Sewell, Associate Dean of Admission. I'm in the admissions office and delighted to be here, kind of facilitating, moderating the conversation, but I'm very excited to be joined by two folks who are actively involved in our psychology program. We have one of our lovely professors and one of our current lovely students who's with us, and they're going to kind of guide us through and talk a little bit more about the program. And so we'll turn it over to them to provide an introduction and get us started in just a second. But towards the end, we're also going to reserve a little bit of time for like question and answer, Q&A, things that are on your mind. And as we're going, if you do have questions that you're, curious to know about or things you want to ask us, please feel free to put those in the Zoom chat box, and we'll do our best to speak to as many questions as we can with the time that we have. But with that, I might turn it over to the two folks from our psychology program whenever you're ready.
Sure. Yeah. Thanks, Grant. Oh, and I see that we're recording. Great. And it's great to have everyone here. I'm Kevin Holmes. I am the chair of the psychology department here at Reed, and I use he, him pronouns. I'm a cognitive psychologist, so I study how, and so my research actually focuses on how language reflects and shapes the way that we think. I will let my student Katie introduce herself.
Hi, yeah, I'm Katie. I use she, her pronouns. I am a senior psychology major at Reed. I am also minoring in dance and Spanish, and I'm currently thesising with Kevin um, within the area of how language is shaping thought. It's really fun. Yeah, I've really enjoyed my time.
All right, so I prepared some slides to just guide us today. But please, as Grant said, please enter questions in the chat, and we can try to answer them as we go. I might kind of present some information and then see if anyone has questions, and we'll see how things go. So I will share my slides here. And let me kind of adjust my window so that I can still see folks and I can see the chat. Okay. All right. So the psychology department at Reed. I'll tell you kind of about the typical path that students take through the psychology major. Most of what we discussed today is summarized on our website. There's lots of information on there, so I encourage you to check that out. And so who are we in the psych department? This is kind of our current collection of faculty. So we're usually made up of 8 full-time faculty, but we are a very popular department. So we have several additional faculty who are with us this year and next year to offer courses and advise senior theses. I should note here that one of my colleagues, Michael Pitts, is going to be on sabbatical next year, and so will not be around, but will be back after that. And then Kathy Olson is the dean of the faculty, and so she is not actively teaching in the department, but she is part of the department. And I'll just briefly tell you a little bit about the different areas that my colleagues and I represent. So psychology is a really broad discipline. Human behavior and animal behavior can be studied at all different levels of analysis, and we kind of try and represent the discipline as it exists in kind of in the world of research. And so I have colleagues who are clinical psychologists who study mental disorders and focusing on assessment, diagnosis, and treatment. As I mentioned, I'm a cognitive psychologist, so I look at processes in the mind, mental processes like categorization, language, reasoning. My colleague Vasily is also a cognitive psychologist. So as I said, Kathy is a social psychologist. We also have Megan on the faculty as a social psychologist who studies how people people think, feel, and behave in social situations, including group dynamics, interpersonal relationships. And then there are some colleagues of mine who are more on the neuroscience end of the discipline. And so we have representatives of behavioral neuroscience and cognitive neuroscience. These are people who look at the biological basis of behavior. In the case of cognitive neuroscience, we're looking at the neural basis of cognitive processes like language and reasoning and attention and consciousness in the case of Michael. And then there are developmental psychologists in the department who study human growth and development across the lifespan. And that can be at the level of kind of physical development or cognitive development, as well as social development. And then comparative psychology. So my colleague Greg is a comparative psychologist, and he studies how behaviors are learned and how they change through various sorts of experiences, various environmental factors. All right, let me see if there's anything here in the chat that we can already start to address. We'll be able to access the slides afterwards. Is that possible, Grant, that we could share the slides? I'm happy to send them to you. I don't know if we can post them.
Yeah, I mean, if you decide to share them with me and you're okay with having them shared, I'm sure we can make that happen.
Okay. So yeah, we'll try to do that after the session. And then there's a question: what is the overlap between sociology and psychology majors at Reed? So those are different departments. So psychology is separate from sociology, but as you might imagine, scholars in each of those disciplines can have overlapping interests. In fact, I have an advisee who is very interested in both and may end up either double majoring, which is actually quite rare at Reed, or majoring in psych and minoring in sociology. I think that's what that student is interested in. But social psychology is kind of be the closest to sociology, but is also different because psychologists use the scientific method to ask questions, and sociologists are going to approach things maybe a little bit different, maybe from a structural perspective, and so you can take classes in both disciplines and find points of overlap, but there are also going to be some distinctions there. And then what else here? Okay, so what is the most popular psychology field that most students concentrate on? I will talk about the major in some detail and talk about different areas of concentration that students choose to pursue. But I will say that across all of these different areas that my colleagues and I represent, there's lots of interest. And so we get students who are interested in all the various subfields. And I think in terms of popularity, it fluctuates from year to year. It depends on the particular group of students that we have. And so I wouldn't say that there are any that are the most popular across all years. And then since there is quite an overlap between psychology and neuroscience, are the faculty members who focus on neuroscience also in the neuroscience department? And what do they focus on in their discipline that is related to psychology? So at Reed, and I'll show a slide of this later, but at Reed, the neuroscience program it's not a separate department. It's a program that's supported jointly by the psychology department and the biology department. And so the faculty that support the neuroscience program, they are technically in one of those two departments, but they offer courses that contribute to the neuroscience major. And so students will take classes. If you're a neuro major, you're going to be taking classes in both biology and psychology. Okay. And we'll talk more at the end maybe about careers in research and also careers that are not specifically research. That's a great question. Okay, we'll be sure to come back to these if we have time. Let me continue with my little spiel here and my slides. So these are the faculty in the department. We also have some staff members that assist in our courses and help manage the facilities. We have an animal colony where we house rats that are used in our research, in some of our faculty members' research, and in classes. Students get to work with the rats and to study kind of basic principles of learning and also principles of behavioral neuroscience. And then, yeah, we also have some other staff members who assist with our introductory psychology course, our statistics course, and just kind of help keep things running. Okay, let me tell you about our approach broadly, and this might help also kind of direct some of the questions later. So we are an empirically based department, and that means that we use the scientific method to study human and animal behavior. And so our faculty have very diverse interests, but we all kind of use the same basic approach. So we make observations. They could be of adults, of children, of non-human animals like rats, and we develop theories and hypotheses. And then we systematically test our ideas. And that could be through laboratory experiments or sometimes through field studies that could take place in classrooms or even social service agencies. But despite kind of the diversity of our interests, the different areas of expertise that we have, we're all aiming to create generalizable knowledge. That means knowledge that extends beyond specific situations, knowledge that can be generalized to a wide variety of contexts. And we do that through the applications of the scientific method. We take the scientific method and we apply it to our particular research questions that are of interest to us to try and make progress, both theoretically and sort of methodologically. We want to understand how the mind and the brain work in more detail. And you're not going to hear too much about Freud or Jung here. We are very much grounded in science. So you're not going to hear about those other approaches that are not considered to be scientific per se. Okay. What else about our approach? It's integrative. So we emphasize rigorous research training. Research training is kind of infused throughout our curriculum. And so students are learning about research methods from early on, from the Psych 101 course. You're taking, there's a lab component to that course that includes a heavy emphasis on research methods. And then that extends through our other courses where methods feature very heavily. And we also kind of use the signature read style of conference style learning. So a lot of our classes involve kind of sitting around a table and discussing research articles together, trying to make sense of them. We will have all done a set of readings for the day and come together prepared to kind of dig into the details and try and understand big themes and also kind of the nitty-gritty methodology of studies so that we can connect theories to methods to results and kind of draw some takeaway conclusions from the articles that we've read. And so we kind of are in it together. We're collaborating together to figure out how things work. And then hands-on experiences. So there are a lot of lab opportunities in our courses. Throughout our curriculum, many of our courses include a lab component. And so students are doing research themselves, getting their hands dirty and carrying out research projects. And we also try and have an interdisciplinary emphasis. So we are at a liberal arts college, and we have colleagues in other disciplines who are asking really interesting questions. And psychology is really seen as almost a hub discipline. We're at the center of lots of different fields, and the questions that we study are related to what scholars in other disciplines are studying. And what I often find in classes, and Katie can back me up on this, students will often make comments where they're drawing on knowledge that they've gained from other classes in other departments, and that can really enrich the discussion. So we are interested in kind of finding out what's common across disciplines, as well as what is unique to a psychological approach to studying mind and behavior. Okay. as I've been saying, right, students are doing real science in our courses, and that often ends up resulting in presentations and publications at scientific meetings where students are co-authors. Katie has been a co-author on a presentation at a scientific meeting, and often students' thesis research goes on to be presented or even published in scientific journals, and so that's a common outcome for research in our department. And that kind of dovetails with the idea that we are preparing students for graduate study. So believe it or not, if you look across the entire nation, we are number one in the US in the percentage of graduates who go on to earn a PhD in psychology. And that speaks to kind of the research training that we provide in our major. And so, of course, the total number of students who go on to pursue a PhD in psychology is small relative to some of the larger, universities. But percentage-wise, we are at the top. And we kind of take pride in that, but we also recognize that students pursue a variety of paths after graduation. And so we don't expect that you're necessarily going to pursue a PhD. And we see the psychology major here as preparing you to be a critical thinker who is going to be able to take on a number of different career paths. And then uh, uh, last but not least, we are an inclusive learning community. We really strive to cultivate a community where everyone feels welcome and supported. And I'll say more a little bit later about the different programs that we have within the department to ensure that students feel connected with each other and with faculty and staff, and to really emphasize that we are a community that learns together, that grows together, that may go through some growing pains at times, but we're here to support each other and to really push each other to new heights. That's the idea. Let's see. Let me now tell you about the major itself, some of the nuts and bolts. So the typical path for a psychology major starts with our introductory sequence. And the intro course, Foundations in Psychological Science, Psych 101, takes place in the fall. And as I mentioned, it includes it includes a few different components. So it includes a twice weekly lecture component. This is where faculty from across the department give lectures in their areas of expertise. And so you really are hearing about kind of basic psychological concepts from faculty who are highly skilled in those areas. So you have that lecture component, and then you also participate in smaller kind of weekly concept labs and applied labs where the focus is on learning and applying research methods. And then psych majors also take a series of 4 methods labs. We call them the psychological science methods modules. And these are kind of intensive mini courses that give you hands-on opportunities to actually do psychological science, applying the skills that you learn in the foundations course. And so each of these 4 methods labs is going to be in a specific area. So I teach one called Methods in Cognitive Psychology, where students are spending a quarter, so 7 weeks, kind of half of the semester, working on a research project, learning about methods in my area of cognitive psychology. They end those 7 weeks presenting their project to the class, and so it's this kind of this mini course in methods in the particular area, and together these 4 mini courses total a second unit of course credit. So each of them is worth a quarter unit. And these methods labs can be taken in the fall or spring, and typically in your first year, sometimes in your second year as well. And Psych 101 is a prerequisite or a co-requisite. So you could take Psych 101 in the fall of your first year, along with maybe 1 or 2 of the methods labs. And then you might take the rest of them in the spring of your first year. Okay. And then after you finish the introductory sequence, If you choose to major in psychology, you'll take 4 units of core courses. So you need to take four of our 8 core courses that we offer. Each faculty member usually teaches one core course in their area of expertise. And so these are kind of these are more extended than those mini labs. Most of these courses have a hands-on lab component where students are collecting and analyzing data. And usually the scale of those lab projects is well beyond what can be accomplished in those mini methods courses. And so I teach cognitive processes. Katie's taken that one and did a lab project as part of that course. So in that course, you would be meeting twice a week for kind of the conference portion, 80 minutes for each of those sessions where, again, we're kind of coming together and discussing readings. I might lecture a little bit in those sessions as well. But then we also meet separately for the lab component of the course where students are focusing on carrying out a research project. Okay, so there's the core courses, and then students are also required to take our statistics course, typically during their sophomore year. And so this is so that they have the tools to analyze data collected in their core courses and for their thesis. And Katie is a veteran of the stats course, took the stats course, and then is now TAing it for the 3rd time. So this is quite an accomplishment for a student here. And I'm going to let Katie speak as well, but let me quickly run through the rest of the requirements for the major. And then we also require 2 electives. This is any other course in psychology. These include seminar courses that dig deep into particular topics, as well as advanced research-intensive courses that provide training in particular techniques or skills. And all of these courses serve as excellent preparation for thesis. And that is the capstone of the major. So the 2-unit thesis, which is done during the senior year, and Katie can tell you about her experience in thesis right now. And I'll come back to thesis a little bit later as well. In addition to requirements within the department, psychology majors also declare an allied field outside psychology, and they complete 6 units within that field. And we have this requirement because we want students to receive a true liberal arts education. We recognize, as I said before, that psychology is intertwined with other disciplines. So let me just say a little bit more about that allied field. So you could choose an allied field in arts and literature, and you could take courses in art, creative writing, dance, English, literature, music, theater, and humanities. So that could be your allied field. You have to choose, you have to take 6 units from at least 2 different disciplines listed for each of these allied fields. But we also have allied fields in biological, physical, and computational sciences, cognitive science, cross-cultural studies, and history and social sciences. If you kind of look back at the requirements within the department, they're fairly light in that you're only taking 11 units out of the 30 total that you need to graduate within psychology. But then you also have this allied field requirement that is going to give you some depth and breadth within an area that's adjacent to psychology. And this kind of encourages a sort of programmatic approach to courses taken outside the department. Let me say a little bit about the sequencing of the courses. So as I said, you would typically take Psych 101 in the fall of your first year, and then those 4 methods labs are spread across the first year in the fall or the spring. Sophomore year, we recommend taking 1 or 2 of those core courses, 4 of those, 1 or 2 of the 4 that you have to take, and then the statistical analysis course as well. Junior year, you'll finish up your core courses, take another 2 or 3 of those, and then take some elective courses as well. And then senior year, you're doing your thesis, and then you might also finish up some of the electives. Like every other department at Reed, we have a junior qualifying exam, and this is to ensure that you're ready to take on your thesis in your senior year. And so the junior qual is usually taken in the spring of your junior year. And in order to be ready to take it, you have to have completed 5 units in psychology, one of which must be a core course, and one of which must be another kind of advanced course, a 300 or 400 level course. Study abroad. Study abroad is becoming more and more popular at Reed, and that's really exciting. If you study abroad as a psych major, it's preferable to do it in the spring of your sophomore year, just because then you can come back for your junior year, kind of get back into the Reed mindset, and then be ready in the spring of your junior year to take that qualifying exam. It's also possible, if you want, to study abroad in the fall of your junior year, and you should still be okay in terms of the being ready for the qual. There's a question, I think, about transfer credit in the chat that I saw. I didn't see exactly what it said. But so it says, are transfer credits from previous university psych classes accepted? Psych 101 and Intro to Developmental Psych. Okay, that's a good question. It's very rare for us to accept an intro to psych course taken at another course as a substitute for our Psych 101 course. And that's because our 101 course is so unique. It's very different from almost anywhere else in that it has those concept and applied labs attached to it. And so most intro psych courses at other schools will only have what's equivalent to our lecture component. And so because they typically don't have those lab components, we will not accept them as substitutes. Now, if you've taken an intro psych course plus, say, a dedicated research methods course, those together might count in place of our Psych 101 course, but it's pretty rare for that to happen. Intro to developmental psych, that's another issue. So that one would probably be most similar to our core course in developmental psychology. The problem there is that most of our core courses, developmental included, have a lab component as well. And if the lab component, if the developmental course that you've taken elsewhere doesn't have that lab component, then we probably wouldn't accept it as a substitute. But other psych courses that you take, say something in group processes and intergroup relations, or a course in, say, comparative cognition that you take at another institution, those can be transferred in as electives. And so it's quite common for students to fulfill the 2-unit elective requirement with transfer credit from other schools. Okay. What else? Okay, let me just say something since we touched on it earlier. This is just showing how the neuro faculty are distributed across biology and psychology. In some years, we have kind of even numbers between the two departments. It just so happens that right now we have a few more biologists than psychologists, but actually that may not even be true because Susie Wren is serving as Associate Dean of the Faculty, so she's not actively teaching at the moment. But you can see that the two departments kind of jointly support that neuroscience program, and you can see kind of the specific areas that each of the neuroscience faculty represent. Okay, I said I would come back to thesis, and I want to do that. So you can see here some examples of thesis topics that students have pursued in recent years. And these projects vary greatly, as you would expect from the wide range of areas covered in our department. But almost all of them are empirical projects, so they involve collecting original data, or in some cases, working from large published data sets to test a hypothesis. And you can see here there's a mixture of human and animal projects. So students working in the area of behavioral neuroscience or comparative psychology typically use animal populations. Other areas typically use human participants. Those could be Reed students, adults in the community, children and adolescents, or participants recruited online through certain crowdsourcing platforms. Katie's thesis involves online participants. And these projects often grow from ideas that students had while taking our classes, sometimes based on a large research paper that they submitted in class, or sometimes based on work that they've been doing in a faculty member's lab during their sophomore or junior year. Sometimes projects are fully student initiated. Sometimes the project might be something that's kind of ongoing in the faculty member's lab, and the student kind of takes it on as their own and really develops it further and takes ownership over the project. Okay, and then here's just a slide showing recent publications and presentations from the department. In fact, Katie is represented on here. Here's the presentation that we made at a conference last year in the Netherlands, and then some other projects from my lab are also represented on this slide, but also other projects from the department. And this is just to emphasize that thesis projects are high quality pieces of research. So most of the publications and presentations at scientific meetings that come out of the department are co-authored by Reed students, and a significant percentage of those are thesis projects. And if you come to Reed and to visit, and you walk down the hallway in our department, you'll see the bulletin boards are lined with posters that have been presented at scientific meetings. All of those are co-authored by Reed students and faculty. And in fact, behind Katie, you can see a poster that was presented at a scientific conference that has Reed student co-authors. Okay, I've been talking a lot. I'm going to say just a few last things, and then we'll open it up to your questions. And I want Katie to speak as well. We really strive to maintain a really vibrant department community. We have a lounge in our building where students congregate to just decompress after class, or to even sit together and work on an assignment. Katie is a tutor for other students, and so we'll sometimes sit down with another student in the lounge to go over material. We have every year in the fall what's called the Squire Retreat. We go off campus and we take a group of students there, and we play a bunch of games. Some of them are psychology related, and it's just kind of a fun community building day. Coming up in a few weeks, we have our thesis poster session. This is something that happens every year, where all of the seniors will present their theses to the rest of the department. We often get visitors from across the college who come to this session, and it's kind of a celebration of the work that they're doing in their senior year. We also have a group of students who are called the Griffin Guides, and these are our student ambassadors. They organize events for the department, things like game night and events where students can paint something together, or just do something, do a fun activity to de-stress and to kind of do something outside of the classroom. We bring in a lot of guest speakers. We have talks throughout the year that are given by researchers from different universities, different colleges, and this adds to the intellectual community of the department. We also have an email list where you hear about lots of different opportunities, students who want to go on and do internships or pursue jobs in the area within the discipline. You can sign up for this email list, and you'll get lots of announcements about those opportunities. Okay, those are my slides. Let me pause for a minute, and I'm going to scan through the chat, but I'm also going to let Katie speak about anything that comes to mind from what I've said.
Yeah, yeah. I guess I was thinking about, I think I hear as a common complaint the lack of transfer credit ability. Um, and I understand that that's frustrating, but I'm thinking about the research that I have done in these courses. Like in the developmental core course that I took, I was able to conduct research at a preschool that I've been working at for many years actually, and we went twice a week for I think 6 weeks for about an hour, and actually gathered data on what the students in the preschool were doing, and made and analyzed research, analyzed that together, and presented the research, presented our own novel findings. And I think part of what's so fun about that is you're also working with a team. And as Kevin says, you have the two components in the class. So you're discussing all of these theories together, figuring out what about what you're learning about is the most exciting to you. And then you can go off with a group of other students who are similarly interested in this niche area and design a project with the help of a faculty member to help oversee how to do that research. And then, yeah, you get to do it. It's been an incredible experience across all of the different areas. I've also worked with rats a lot, and that's really, really fun in its own way as well.
Yeah, great. We can maybe move through the chat, and we can try to address some of these questions. So I'm going to start from the bottom because I can't I can't track everything unless I do that. So, okay, wow, there's a lot coming in.
Mm.
Okay, this is a 4-year program. Yeah, typically students will take 4 years to complete the program, and that includes not just your major, but also distribution requirements. So taking courses across different areas of the college, and that also includes, the Hume 110 course that you take in your first year here. In what circumstances would your program time shorten or lengthen? Yeah, so 4 years is kind of the standard, but some students will try to push through in shorter than that. We don't necessarily recommend that because we want your brain to breathe a little to kind of space things out and really let the material sink in and be able to experience all of the different courses that we have to offer. And also research, takes time and it's difficult sometimes if to do a thesis in your third year because you may just not quite have enough of the experience that is really essential for carrying out a strong thesis project. And in some cases, students will take a little bit longer than 4 years. Um, but yeah, can you take extra classes to speed up? So I think I saw another question about the minimum and maximum credits. So a standard load for one semester is between 3 and 4.5 units. Students will find that 4.5 units keeps them quite busy. And it is possible in some special cases to overload and take more than 4.5, but that is a very rare thing. But yeah, if you were to take 4.5 units every semester, you probably would be able to speed things up a little bit. But maybe Katie can say a little bit about. I know you've probably had semesters where your unit total was a little bit different, and how did that feel to you as a student?
Yeah, yeah. I accidentally overloaded a lot my first year, and it was doable. And a lot of those, not a lot, but both semesters, one of those classes was a dance class, and so I was using my brain in a variety of ways. But I think as a senior, this is my first semester not overloading, which I know Kevin said is a unique thing to be overloading. It is possible, but now that I am experiencing the room to breathe and to actually really focus and dive into the schoolwork that I'm doing, it's clear that this is, I think, a better way to be doing things. You have more space to take care of yourself. Um, yeah, it's possible. And I thought about graduating in 3 years as well, but I love it here and I didn't necessarily want to leave early. I think for me it was more worthwhile to really dive deep and take advantage of all these opportunities.
How many credits are required to complete the degree? So 30 units total at Reed, and that's across all 4 years. And as I said, it's 11 for the psych major, it's 11 units within the department. It's also 6 additional units for the allied field. But the allied field also, like these courses that you take for your allied field, will also fulfill some of the other distribution requirements that you have. And so um, yeah, and so if you're taking about 4 units a semester but again between 3 and 4.5, you will reach that 30 unit total by the end of the 4 years. Yeah, I don't know the percentage of students to graduate in 4 years. That I'm not aware of that number. But students who are kind of reaching the stage of declaring the psych major, the majority of them are finishing in 4 years. Okay. Um, how long can a student how long can a student earn? Oh, okay. Um, yeah, the neuroscience major. So I encourage you to attend the session. I think there's another office hour session. I think it's tomorrow for the neuro major. And so they can tell you more about that there. It is a higher number of units for the neuro major than the psych major, and that's because you're taking courses across both biology and psychology. You're also taking a little bit of chemistry and physics as well, and a little bit of math. But you can think of the neuro major as you're majoring. It's almost like you're majoring in either biology or psychology, and then minoring in the other one. And so if you think of it that way, the larger number of units required kind of makes sense for the neuro major. Okay. What are some example careers students can pursue after majoring in psychology? That's a great question. So, as I said, uh, we are proud of the fact that we prepare students very well for graduate school. So if you choose to go on to earn a PhD in psychology, the typical career path is something like what I do, to become a professor. But there are a number of other careers. So you can earn a PhD and you can go work in industry and can do work in data science or do research for a company, and that's very common. You can also pursue other graduate paths. So we have students who go on to earn a master's in social work, and they work in social work, or they become a therapist or a counselor. But then there are also many other career paths you can pursue. So just because you're majoring in psychology doesn't mean that you're going to ultimately work as a psychologist, right? The major is going to prepare you to think critically about life, about how behavior operates, and that is relevant for so many different career paths that you might take. You can go work for a nonprofit. You can, yeah, you can do any number of things, and you're going to be well prepared for that. Okay. Is there any course related to forensic or criminal psychology? That's really interesting. So we don't have a course in forensic psychology per se. That's kind of an applied area that grows out of some of the more basic research areas in the field. So work in like research in cognitive or social psychology, even neuroscience will inform the work of forensic psychologists. And so, cognitive psychologists like myself often will study basic processes of memory that become really important in forensic settings. And so I think you'll find if you have interest in that area that taking our core courses will give you a glimpse of sort of key concepts that could then be applied in the real world in various ways. Okay, I'm going to keep scrolling up. How many credits of 300 and 400 level courses need to be fulfilled in order to graduate? And do we have 500 level courses? We don't have 500 level courses, okay? And that's true across Reed. I think the 500 levels are actually the master's course, the MLA, Master in Liberal Studies courses. And yeah, so there's not a specific number. Well, I guess all of our core courses are at the 300 level, so you would need to take 4 of those. And then the electives can be at any level. So that includes the 200 level as in addition to the 300 and 400 level. And then thesis, of course, is also at the 400 level. So there's some flexibility there, but there's not, a specific number of credits at those different levels. Is it usually students can declare only one allied field? It is usually the case that only one allied field will be possible, and that's because 6 units is kind of a lot. And so taking courses doing 2 of those is probably pretty tough to pull off, and so I don't see that. But you're also welcome to take courses outside of psychology and outside of your allied field. And so this is, as I said, we're aiming to have a well-rounded liberal arts education. And so if you can fit it into your schedule, you're encouraged to take courses just for fun or just to explore other disciplines. Okay. Am I catching all of these? How early should students begin conducting their own research, and how does this fit into the curriculum? So in psychology and other scientific fields, research is almost always collaborative. And so we rarely will conduct a project entirely on their own. So I speak for myself as a researcher. All of my research is done in collaboration with students and sometimes with other faculty members at either at Reed or at other colleges and universities. And so I would say that for students here at Reed, there are opportunities to get involved in research before the senior year, before you undertake your thesis. So we actually, just before this session, finished a lab meeting where it was we had a bunch of students who were seniors who were doing their thesis with me, but also some underclass students who attended because they're interested in the topics that our lab studies, and they were participating in the meeting, asking questions, making comments, and sometimes there will be opportunities in the labs for those underclass students to take on projects working with the faculty member, and that could give them experience with doing research even outside of classes with the lab component, and also maybe lead into a senior thesis project in some cases. Katie, feel free to jump in here if I'm.
Yeah, I was just going to add that one of them also helps me with coding some of my responses, so they also can sometimes work with students on their own theses, and that's pretty cool.
There's a question about, do you have a thesis title yet? And maybe you could say a little bit about your project.
Yeah. I know I saw that and I was trying to remember what my thesis title even is. I think it's something along the lines of generic language and structural thinking about social groups. And my thesis, I think in the simplest terms, is about adjusting the way that we speak to reduce stereotyping of social groups. And it's specifically there. And so it has been studied, and they've found that there is a specific way to address a certain kind of speaking that has been found to elicit a lot of stereotypes. So they figured out a way to reduce the stereotypes that are usually drawn from that kind of statement. Sorry, I'm having the curse of knowledge, stumbling over my words. But anyways, so they found the solution. That's great. But the solution was only studied with these kinds of statements made about novel populations, made about these made up people, Burundians and Allans that live in a fictional country. And so I think it's great that they found this solution, but I was curious if it would hold up when the groups are real world groups, are groups that people are familiar with, groups that people already have stereotypes about and biases towards. And so I replicated the study and extended it, looking also at using this solution to address stereotyping specifically about Mexican immigrants compared to Americans as like the base. And I found that it does not. In fact, while it works for the novel groups, it does not work for the real world groups. And yeah, I think super exciting to have been able to study this completely new thing. I feel like I'm breaking new ground. And I also am excited that really all I'm left with is more questions. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's often the case in research. We do a study and we find certain results, and they often raise more questions than answers, and that leads us to the next study that we do, and that's how research builds on itself. Okay, what else here? Can AP credits or transfer in for non-psychology electives? So things like AP English, AP World History. If you earn a certain score on some of these AP exams, or I think IB exams as well, you can earn credit toward the 30 unit requirement for graduating from Reed. But these AP exams, these AP credits don't replace courses that are part of the Reed curriculum. So they can count toward that total unit total you need to reach, but they wouldn't, like, for example, if you take AP Psych, as I said before, it doesn't stand in for our Psych 101 course.
They can stand in for prerequisites, though, as well. I don't know if you mentioned that, but that's, yeah, like for Spanish classes and yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay. What psychology program would you recommend for someone who wants to research disorders? And so that sounds like clinical psychology. And so you might take courses with my colleague Chris Anderson, who studies adolescent psychopathology. And in particular, her research focus is on adolescents' decision making around alcohol and drugs. And so that's what she studies in her lab, but in her courses, she offers psychopathology, she offers an upper level clinical psychology course. And so students with interest in disorders would want to take those courses. Um, okay. I think we've talked a little bit about career paths, internships, internships for psych students. So there are a few different kinds of internships. So in the department, we often have students working in our labs over the summer. And so you can do a research internship with a Reed faculty member that you receive funding for. So you and the faculty member might apply for funding for the student to be to receive a stipend for doing research over the summer. And Katie did that last summer with me. And so that's can be a good experience. But it's also possible to do research internships at other schools, and I think there's some funding available from Reed to pursue those opportunities as well. And so, yeah, we're not the only place that does research over the summer. But then there's also other kinds of internships. So internships in the community, and some faculty in the department have connections with community partners, community organizations, where Reedies will sometimes find kind of a placement for the summer and pursue work there. And so there are a lot of different opportunities. Like I mentioned in the slides, there's this email list called Cyclist that students should be subscribed to, and you'll hear about various opportunities that include internships. Okay, I think I've gotten to most of these questions, but is there anything else, sort of, are there any other burning questions here? And let me know if I missed anything. What about taking previous college courses? Um, yeah, that works similarly to transfer other transfer credit. So yeah, previous college courses, or if you have an AA from a community college, that will be considered in like when you start out at Reed, they'll kind of evaluate the credits that you've earned at whatever previous institution you've attended, and figure out how those transfer in, and you'll get some credit for those, assuming that they meet certain requirements or that they are kind of broadly sort of comparable to courses that you might take at Reed.
Was gonna say, I think you got to the questions there, Kevin. I might throw one last one out there to just kind of close out our time a little bit to yourself and Katie. But I don't know if you both might share, and maybe you already have. What's maybe something you love about Reed, or just like that you enjoy?
Yeah, I think I love the collaborative learning. I love how much I feel like the people around me are incredibly motivated in a similar way to me, and we are able to bring these ideas and get super excited about them. And I often lose track of time in a class because I am just so enthralled by these discussions that we're having. And it's not just with the students, but with the professors as well. Everyone is incredibly engaged. And they're able to bring in their outside interests. I talk about my dance classes in my psych classes all the time. And I hear from students who are specialized in computer science or English or whatever it is. And I think it's so interesting to find that common ground because there's so much to be learned in the intersectionality of all these disciplines.
Yeah, I think I'll echo that as well, and just say that I love that at Reed we care about learning, just the intrinsic value of learning, and pursuing knowledge for knowledge's sake, right? It's we invest in the ideas, and we think there's value in learning more about how the world works, and in our discipline, how behavior and how mind, brain, and behavior work, and so together, we are working as collaborators to arrive at greater understanding, and we do that in our classrooms, in our labs, just in the hallway when we are talking to each other about the work that we're pursuing. And so it's a really vibrant community.
It really is. And I can answer that last question that was directed to me about the course load. I think it is manageable if you're not over, I mean, it's manageable if you're overloading. I did do it, but it was challenging, really challenging. I did not have a lot of time to pursue outside interests, or friendships, or things like that that I think are invaluable. Although if you're not overloading, it's challenging still, but it is definitely manageable and always felt supported by the faculty. You are always able to, these like one-on-one relationships are not only in the academics, but I'm also able to confide in them about what's going on in my personal life. I've never had an experience where I felt like a professor has not cared about me and helped me figure out a path towards success where I'm still able to learn the material, even given whatever challenges I'm going through.
Perfect. I wanted to offer a tremendous thank you to Katie and Kevin for spending some time with us today and sharing all this wonderful information. And thank you to you all for joining and being a part of this conversation. There'll be more sessions like this, I think, as Kevin shared, a lot of other office hours that you can join, and we would encourage you to do that in addition to other events, about getting to know like residence life, conversations with the college president. So definitely keep an eye out for sessions, and we hope to see a lot of you there. And if we didn't get to your question, I did share in the chat box, there's a couple ways you can get in touch with us, admission@reed.edu. Or if you want to talk to current students like Katie, write a Reedie at reed.edu, and we'd be happy to speak to the questions. But with that, I just want to offer a tremendous thank you to all of you, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.